So it's in the vicinity, or sorry, it's stock that is the biggest component of SPY. And we're just going to spend a couple minutes on it because this is ahead of earnings tomorrow. Now, I am a technician. I, right now, at this moment, really don't know much about the actual fundamentals to tomorrow's earnings, the expected revenue or estimated revenue versus, what's going to hit tomorrow, the EPS that's estimated, the expenses and how they change for the company. It's on you guys to go dig into that information if you're trading Apple directly. What we can do is take a technical look and see if there's any key levels, momentum, or forecasting. So out of the gate, again, I haven't looked at this in advance. I'm doing it with you here live. What I see is last week we had a very significant candlestick pattern, which is awesome, okay? So we had a piercing line, and this is a traditional candle pattern, but this is one that is one of the 15 or so that I get into in my Gann candlestick system. Now, those of you who are fully into Gann candlesticks, you know the different types of nano levels that we can calculate, okay? So I'm just kind of going in with the most basic set first, because I just want to know where's the midpoint of last week's range on Apple. So 135.70, if you trade Apple, jot this down, 135.70 is an extremely important level on Apple, as it also coincides with this rising trend line, which was violated. So I'm going to make it dashed. But if we return back to it, could produce new support, okay? So that's the first thing, 135.70 support, great. Now, if we apply this same technique to find resistance, okay? So again, I'm just demonstrating, I'm not teaching the innards of Gann candlesticks. I would look at 166.65 as an important level in the weekly chart, okay? So I'm going to jot those here for myself as well, because I'm going to change the chart and I don't want to lose those levels. So 166.65 and 135.70. Got it, guys? Type a Y in the chat. That's just on the weekly chart of Apple. All right. Excuse me, monthly chart of Apple. Okay. Now the weekly chart. Now my weekly chart has a lot going on, as I mentioned, because it's got my methods in full force. Now here's the really cool thing. I'd had a forecast on Apple for some time, and we met it beautifully last week. So this was in my reports, my deep dive Outlook reports that I published January 8th. So those of you who get the Outlook, you were set up to be on the right side of Apple for these first couple weeks of 2023. Here's the thing. When you reach a forecast, right? When I reach that point of that forecast, it doesn't tell me what's going to happen next. You have to look at the price, time, momentum, any new forecasts to be prepared. So on top of also going back to past earning dates, which is something you can do, let's just stick to the technicals here and see. Well, you can see I already have laid out some analysis on Gann candles. 150.68 is an important resistance. So that would be before getting to 166.65. And 130.90 is an important support. Again, that would be if we broke below 135.70. So I'm also showing you guys, this is how you map on a stock or anything else from long-term coming into short-term. Making sense? Type a Y in the chat. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to go to the daily chart and finish out Apple. So the same weekly forecast that I had is now transposed to the daily chart, and how you transpose from daily to weekly or weekly to daily and change timeframes. Okay, I teach that in loss forecasting. I'm just demonstrating for you here now. What I want to look at is where we are right now. So I'm just going to clean up some levels here. I'm going to take away this resistance that we traded through, and this one here, I'm going to make this one a dot because we're kind of churning around this 144.24. Now I'm going to just delete these lines back here, okay, just to focus in on the analysis we just developed. And I'm going to edit these to those levels I talked about. So from the monthly chart, it was 135.70. That was important support. Weekly chart support was 130.60 or 130.90, okay? So for some reason, Apple changes from its current uptrend, okay, and turns lower. Those are the levels that I would be monitoring. And from the daily chart, the big one is 138.81. Do you guys see that? It's the most recent higher price low. Type O in the chat if you see that support. Okay. Now for the upside, I'm just gonna, these are not invalid levels. I just want to focus on the exercise we just did. On the weekly chart, we had, and I'm making this blue for resistance, 150.68. And 166.65. Okay, so now I'm going to add back a level that was in between there. Okay. And that's the map for the key levels on Apple, independent of the direction it takes. If it goes down, we have a roadmap. If it goes up, we have a roadmap. Now, what direction do I think is more likely to happen? I don't have a crystal ball. Do not trade this on its own, but I will share what I think is more likely, okay? So after recovering higher from bullish divergence in no man's land, that's an advanced RSI power zone setup, we have been sailing higher in Apple, right? Came up into this January 27th high and been consolidating. This, guys, looks like a traditional flag-like situation, okay? So you have this flag that's tilted down. This is the mast, okay? It's not perfect, but it has that vibe to it. So if it's supposed to continue higher, then we take this mast, the flagpole, and we project it from the upside here. So this is very early. Do not trade this unless it gets confirmation, because this is an early forecast. But if we see continued upside here from Apple, then we could be talking about a move into that 166.65 over the course of February. Guys, please type OI in the chat if you understand that. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about the next day. Things don't just jump, okay? They can if there's news, but we're looking at a roadmap. Okay. Now remember, what I just showed you here is not a confirmed forecast, so I have to be saying don't go trading it. If you want to know how to confirm it and trade it, then you apply the techniques from loss forecasting. So big picture, Apple looks like it's on the move higher, while above 138.81. Earnings release might fuel this, and we know these short-term resistance levels, and still the big resistance is up in this 166 area. Sound good, guys? Was that helpful? Type a line in the chat. Okay. So there's a lot to cover on the SPY and Apple given today's FOMC news. So now we'll dig into your questions and requests.